Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Nick Watts, and welcome to another episode of College Football Under Review, a show made by a football fan for football fans everywhere. So, in today's episode, we are changing how the style is going. We are getting closer and closer to the college football season. So, with that in mind, we're going into our conference deep dives. And in this first one, it is going to be all of the group of five conferences combined. And past this, we are going to go into all the other conferences. And then I will also do a shorter episode kind of going over all the independents like Notre Dame and also the two Pac-12 teams. So look out for that. But with dealing with the group of five conferences, it's really difficult because they have been attacked so much with the NIL and transfer portal to Power Four schools. They kind of pick their good players. So every year it's kind of difficult to figure out which team's going to be good. But don't worry, that's why we're here. We did all the research for you. So when looking at these, some of the biggest factors this show took a look at were with all these teams were the coach's tenure. So how long he's been there. Is it a new year, second year? Is he taking over a team where everyone transferred out? Is he coming in to change the culture? We also looked at schedule difficulty because sometimes these group of five schools are going to need to play Power Four schools and getting more revenue. So sometimes they could be playing two or three Power Four schools and it makes their schedule look very difficult and could add some more stress to their season and win total. And we also really looked into players who had returned because like I stated earlier, the group of five really has consistently been under attack from Power Four teams. And with the NIL and the portal, it really cannibalizes itself. And especially within the group of five, other peoples will transfer, to a different group of five school. And we're starting to see this kind of the tier list come out for these conferences. So it's interesting to see that and how it evolves. Now, this episode, like I also said earlier, will work differently than how we have previously presented the show. Typically, we would give you three topics and go into it and have off my chest. We do not have an off my chest this episode because there is so much to talk about with these group of five conferences, but we do have three different archetypes for each of these conferences. So we're going to have three teams that we have titles for. And then we will also put our title game prediction and who we think will win in these conferences. So what these archetypes are is first a wild card. And so for us, this is a team that has a potential crapshoot season that could either be a great success and a step in the right direction, or it could be a decline if not all the stars align for him this season. Next is the dark horse team. Now, this is a team that has the potential to shake things up in the conference title race and could very much be overlooked and seen as an underdog coming into the season. And last is one we call Sisters of the Poor. This is, as you could guess, the team that seems to have the worst chance of a positive season. This doesn't mean that they're going to be bad. It just might seem that the cards are stacked against their favor. So with all that explanation, once we give those three archetypes, we'll give you our title game, both of those teams, what we think about them, and then tell you our prediction for who will win that. So with all that and the synopsis of how this episode's going to go, let's take these conferences under review. So the American Athletic Conference is first. We're going to be doing these not based on our tier list, but alphabetically. So in the ACC, our wild card is Tulane. The quarterback talent is very questionable with Caden Somoza and Donovan Leary, and the skill position players are a severe downgrade. Running back Maurice Turner and Jamari McClure could be the saving grace, though, if the offensive line does its job. Defensive line and linebackers are decent, but the secondary is definitely up in the air as their three best players transferred out. Another concern with this team is if they can gel together with the transfers and players that stayed. But I think that head coach John Sumrall will definitely show us whether or not he is the man for Tulane going into his second season with the team, having so many people transferred out and having good success last year. So I'm very interested and believe that this is a wild card team because we're going to see if he can continue the success. Now, our dark horse is Army. The iconic Bryson Daly is gone, and 1,100-yard rusher Kanye Udo is gone as well. But returning QB Dwayne Coleman does look to be a solid replacement at quarterback position, and center Brady Small and right guard Paolo Gennarelli returns as hard-to-push rocks for that offensive line. The defense is majority upperclassmen, yet both starting quarterbacks transferred out. And the O-line and quarterbacks are the biggest concerns in our opinion. They really need to mesh well and give the quarterbacks time, especially early in the season, to kind of get into the role. And they are definitely going to be looking for their revenge against Navy this season. And for the conference, our Sisters of the Poor are Tulsa. New head coach Trey Lamb takes over the program as a youthful face, and energy accompanies him. The program is definitely having to rebuild from the ground up this offseason, especially on the offensive side of the ball. The defense last season was anything but productive, giving up 19 50-plus yard plays. Yikes. The defense only returns 3 players as well, while almost everywhere else has been filled and replaced with transfer portal players. But with a new coach, a difficult schedule, and new staff, this definitely seems like a rebuild year for them. I do think they will be on the trend up, but their first year is really going to be tough. And like I said, we're looking at coach, schedule, and kind of these teams and what they have to deal with. And a lot of these conference group of 5 teams have to deal with all of these, but some have it worse than others. That's why we got Tulsa down there. So our title game, I believe it will be Navy against Memphis, and Navy's quarterback Horvath and their fullback Tetsa and wide receiver Snipe Heinrich returns. Their offense returns 8 players, while the O-line is a little bit weak. The defensive secondary, though, is also a big hole as they lost key players who helped generate a stout red zone defense last season. And a weak first half of the schedule does allow them to make sure the offense evolves, and also time for the new secondary and linebackers to learn to work together. This all combines for the possibility of another title game appearance. I just think that Horvath is very good, and they are set to have another great season because that first half of the schedule really does allow them to work out the kinks of their offense and new players. So Memphis, they have a very winnable schedule this season. Running back Sutton Smith returns after a season-ending injury from week 1 last season, and backup Greg DeRoser, some of these last names are going to be a little tough, but he is a good option. The team has also made great portal acquisitions for the defense with players like Everett Roussall Jr. and Drew Watts. And the special teams are phenomenal with this team and definitely could be the saving grace in some of these close games that they had last season. But all in all, they have an 11 bowl game appearance streak on the line that definitely gives the team a goal to be united behind and attempt for continued success. Though I think I will be taking Navy in this matchup to be the conference champion for the American Athletic Conference. Next up is Conference USA. So our wild card for Conference USA is UTEP. They struggled to score last season, but their up-tempo offense can be a more stable system with key skill position players with wide receivers Kenny Odom and Cam Thomas returning, who definitely understand the system better now. The running game must improve personnel and staff, and the defense has changed, creating a question of improvement or decline. So this staff really kind of throws up in the air what's going to happen. The depth chart, though, has had minor improvements in recruiting, and their pass rush really needs improvement if they want to have continued success. If their offense can elevate their scheme productivity and the defensive line can improve, I definitely think they have the foundation built and could be a up season for the UTEP Miners. Jacksonville State is our dark horse. First-year head coach Charles Kelly takes over a past Rich Rod-led team. He left for West Virginia. Lots of quarterback competition, and quarterback Gavin Wimsatt and Cade Cunningham is going on, which can be a positive and negative, but I think in this instance, it's a very much positive, as it's a coach that gets, in his first year, that gets to decide how he wants the team moving forward. The wide receiver core has great experience with Michael Pedway and Brock Reschsteiner and Jordan McCants, who played every game last season, which is a very big plus when you have a coach leaving. That's very big that they were able to keep all these skill position players. The O-line will be strong to support running back Andrew Paul, and the defensive line is a huge threat against opponents. The secondary on the defense is the weakest link, and there are no returning starters for the defensive backs. Their transfer portal talent, though, brings many questions to success after the departure of Rich Rod. So I think with all that being said, I think that they definitely have the ability to go on a run if Charles Kelly can create some magic in his first year and set a culture that he wants. And Sisters of the Poor are going to be Kennesaw State. It is another building year for the Owls. They fired their head coach, Brian Bohannon, last season after leading them to success in the FCS. It just seemed like he was going to be the fall guy coming into the FBS transition. But financially, overall, they have yet to really adapt as an FBS program and really has rehauled the team through the portal. So I think the horizon is still very dark, as the transition to FBS has not fared well for the Owls, and the school is still trying to figure out what that transition looks like. Now, getting on to the title game, we think it's going to be Western Kentucky and Liberty. Western Kentucky has seventh-year head coach Tyson Helton bringing stability and consistently a keen eye for FCS talent to supply his roster in the portal. He has had a 48-32 career with 6 years at the school. Now, with major losses to the coaching staff and players on both sides for their top performers, they have consistently been able to overcome this adversity the last couple of years with the portal coming out. The team, though, with that being said, I don't think they're going to be scared to take risks when it counts in these games, especially close ones that are one possession, to keep their seventh consecutive bowl appearance hopes alive. On the other side of the ball, Liberty has the addition of Coastal Carolina quarterback Ethan Vasco, but in my opinion, the question can emerge: is he commanding the locker room or his pocketbook because he got a nice NIL deal to come there? But all they need for the offense to be dominant is running backs Caden Williams and Julian Gray to have an effective year. And critical stops must be made by the secondary and not allow explosive plays, which was a little bit of a problem last year. And the defensive line is definitely going to look to TJ Bush Jr. to be the leader in that core. But you may be saying, oh, this doesn't seem great. Well, they have a weak schedule. Their week 4 JMU, James Madison University game, will probably be the earliest big test that they have for their ability as a contender in this conference. But Liberty continues to be on the rise as one of these top 5 programs that could contend for a playoff spot. But Liberty is our pick to win the Conference USA title game. Now we move on to the MAC. The MAC is interesting, but our wild card is Miami, Ohio. 0 returning starters on offense, so already a wild card. QB quarterback Daquan Finn could be a great threat as a mobile quarterback within this unit, and the running back room is good, but has kind of had injury problems in the past, especially affecting Kenny Tracy, and their other quarterback in reserve has seen limited success on the field. But their wide receiver core includes Deion Colsey, Darian Williamson, and Keith Reynolds. And if they can get their crap together and work well, then they could definitely have a breakout season. And Cordell Russell and Brady Simmons are all transfers, but they're Power 4 transfers. So all of these are going to be strong players within this team. The offensive line could also be a question as Brandon Moore got injured this offseason, and the linebackers are solid, but all newcomers. So Miami, Ohio really needs these Power 4 guys, recruits, to lead the way from the transfer portal, and their defense needs to mesh well. And if all this happens, watch out. Miami, Ohio could be a threat within the MAC conference. And our dark horse is going to be Ohio. Quarterbacker Parker Navarro is one of the most productive players in this group of 5 teams within the MAC, with 2,423 passing yards, 13 touchdowns, and over 1,000 rushing yards coming from last season. Though, with all these positives, his favorite wide receiver is gone. 7 starters on defense are gone, as well as the unit only has 4 seniors in it. Defensive coordinator John Hauser is a big component for success, though, this season, as head coach Brian Smith takes on his first full season as head coach. He had a win in the bowl game last season as interim head coach, and the secondary has multiple Power 4 transfers. Though they are a dark horse because they have a tough schedule, and their coach's first year throws it up there, but much of the staff stayed on, so that definitely gives them the stability that they need to have a consistent culture continue to be built, and we believe that the culture will create positive results for them this season. Now, the Sisters of the Poor within this conference is Kent State. Quarterback Devin Cargman returns after a week 4 injury and struggles against detecting coverages and pressure. The defensive line is weak as they look to Mason Maddox and Antone Campbell to lead, and the linebackers look promising, and the secondary is strong, or at least the staff claims. Everyone's going to claim they have a strong secondary, but that's what they're saying after, A-days and all that. But last season, they were last in defense and offense and went 0-12, and they fired their head coach for off-field activities. This all doesn't seem to be a great group, and it doesn't seem like they are on the up and up anytime soon. But the title game for the MAC, we have Toledo versus Buffalo. For Toledo, senior quarterback Tucker Gleason returns after last season, him getting 2,908 passing yards, 24 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and a 61 completion percentage. The O-line is strong with versatile players to shift in case of injury, with 3 starters returning. Now, coming off a subpar season, the attention to detail on past success in the run game definitely will be on the forefront and needs to be established in an attempt to get a run-first offense going again, which will be tough as their running back one, Chip Trayanum, has had multiple injuries. And the secondary on the defense will be a staple this season to stay very competitive and cornerback Avery Smith and Brandon Owls will be leading that linebacker core and defensive back core. And it just seems like Toledo still has what it takes to go to the conference title game this season. Now, Buffalo, with the return of 3 skill position players on offense, wide receiver Victor Snow and Nick McMillan, who was injured last season, and running back Al J. Henderson. It seems like they are going to have some consistency there, but transfer quarterback Taquan Robertson has had enough time to get comfortable for conference play, as their schedule doesn't have too difficult of a stretch, but their strong running back duo will definitely help ease this quarterback into the conference and the team as a whole. Their offensive line is led by Tyler Doty and Trevor Brock, and they should complement the skill positions greatly, especially these running backs. The defense returns 10 starters, with 2 of them having the first and second most tackles last season for the team. The only weakness, though, could be the secondary, but doubtful as 4 starters return. The offensive production combined with the secondary being able to improve can definitely make this team deadly. But at the end of the day, I think Toledo will win the MAC championship with their quarterback. I think Tucker Gleason definitely hitting more of the same stride and even improving on last year's numbers. Got to get some water. Now, we move on to the Mountain West Conference. So our wild card is none other than San Jose State. Head coach Ken Niumatalo has a potent and effective spread and shred offense, as they call it there, and will be effective with quarterback Walker Eget returning, who understands the system more and will work well in the scheme, who finished number 5 in the nation in passing. And their running game has lots of contributors who combined for over 1,000 yards, and it will be interesting to see if they utilize that more, as they are a more pass-heavy offense. Good news is the offensive line only lost 2 starters, and they have deep experience on the right side of the line. Their schedule doesn't have really any hard hitters for out of conference, and the coaching staff is a solid foundation to allow this team to outperform last year's 7-6 schedule. Now, the dark horse is Fresno State. 70% of offensive production has left, and a new coaching group enters the scene. Quarterback is E.J. Warner. And you say, Warner, that's a great last name. Well, it is a great last name because he's Kurt Warner's son. They have overhauled the wide receiver room for Kurt Warner's son, and it has Josiah Freeman with some injury concerns, and Jaleel McClain transfers in from Louisville. And a young tight end, Richie Anderson, definitely seems like an up-and-coming talent in that receiving core. And the defensive backs are talented and has solid fits everywhere. So that's very good for their defense, as their offense is definitely going to need help after losing all that production. Head coach Matt Ince has been a successful coach in the FCS and is definitely looking to bring a winning culture to Fresno State, and our show thinks he just might be able to do that. Now, Sisters of the Poor, New Mexico State, or New Mexico, my bad. Only 1 starter returns on offense, and the team is filled with a lot of FCS transfers. The wide receiver room completely rebuilt from scratch. If the defense gets injured, then disaster could definitely strike for this team, as they don't have much depth there, and they have a tough road schedule for the Lobos, which includes San Jose State, Boise State, Michigan, and UCLA. All easy losses in our opinion. But for the title game in the Mountain West Conference, we have to look at Boise and UNLV. For Boise, we have to face the hard truth. Ashton Genty is gone. But a deep breath is that Maddox Mason returns after a great season, getting over 3,000 yards, 23 touchdowns, and had a 62% completion rating. And he did this while only having 6 interceptions. Though he will definitely need to step up, as he wasn't needed much to be a star player last season and had the ability to develop as a quarterback. So I definitely think he's going to have more of that success. It'll be very interesting to see him kind of step into more of the guy kind of role. But the defense as a whole continues to definitely improve due to an extremely experienced secondary, with 4 starters returning who only allowed an average of 241.4 passing yards per game last season. And top defensive line in the conference within Jaden Virgin Morgan is leading the defensive line, coming off of a 10-sack season last year. So with all this being said, Boise clearly seems to have early signs of a powerhouse being built there and could easily be the group of 5 team that makes it into the playoffs again. Now, UNLV, want to say, love Dan Mullen. I'm excited to see him coach again. But they have 2 outstanding quarterbacks that offer option within the program, with Anthony Colandrea and Alex Orji, who both transferred in. Dan Mullen could easily use both of these quarterbacks to get a leg up on defenses within the conference and use them both in games to stress the defensive coverage and their game plan. Now, they only have seniors and juniors starting for the starting 11 on offense, which definitely gives this team a maturity which is needed, as, like we've stated, the group of 5 is always under threat of the transfer portal. The O-line is a big question on the right side and definitely could affect the quarterback selection based on how they play. Now, Paul Ginther is the new defensive coordinator, and coming in, I think is I have a lot of confidence in this guy because he has a lot of NFL experience, which is huge for group of 5 teams nowadays. And I think the ability to get more depth was key in this offseason, as a lot of their transfers were from Power 4 programs. And it seems like a lot of these players respect and like Dan Mullen, who is a more splashier coaching hire within group of 5. And I definitely think UNLV made a great choice, even though they have stated they can't pay his full contract, which is still hilarious to think about. But I think Dan Mullen is going to show them why they need to pay his full contract. Now, he must be able to establish his culture with his current players there and the transfer players to find great success. And although I do love Dan Mullen and I think that they have a great shot at winning this title, we just have to take Boise State for winning the conference. They have continued to show us that they are becoming the standard for group of 5. In order to be interesting to see if their head coach gets scooped up if they have another really successful season by a Power 4 school. Now, with that out of the way, we have the Sun Belt Conference, our last conference we're going into. So the wild card is University of South Alabama. I went to Spring Hill. I was literally a mile or 2 away from this campus, and their quarterback, Gio Lopez, is gone. He transferred to North Carolina. Bill Belichick grabbed him, picked him up. But quarterback Bishop Davenport played great in their bowl game win and produced 356 yards on offense that game, which is spectacular. You may say, oh, it was a bowl game, they're not putting all their best players in. I think for group of 5, they are putting all their best players in. And so I think that's a great win for them to even show give him more time to develop, but also to show he can play well. Now, the offense as a whole with him looks poised to be strong only if the wide receivers can stand out, especially wide receiver Devin Voisin can stave off injury, because he has shown that he is good and he can be a breakout player, but injury has plagued him. So we're hoping that he has, he's able to stave off injury and do well this year. Now, they have plenty of versatile players on defense, with linebackers Blaine Myrick and Darius McKenzie combining for over 150 tackles last season. The defensive line is their biggest concern, as their two best left the program, but this team must have to have a good run defense and must win one possession games down the stretch. And if they do this, I think they can potentially shake things up in the conference, and head coach Applewhite could definitely be seeing the glimpses of a potential Sun Belt Conference title game. But that's why they're a wild card. They got to have a lot of things go right for them on defense and offense and stave off injury. Now, our dark horse for this conference is Georgia Southern. Their quarterback, J.C. French IV, that's a fun name to say. I'm going to say it again. Quarterback J.C. French IV returns with consistency in the backfield as their top running back left, and they have replaced that with senior O.J. Arnold. Now, replacing big losses on the defensive side of the ball poses a big question for this team on whether or not they can have a successful pass rush. The secondary looks dangerous, though, with four returners coming back, and the O-line and defensive line look solid as each carry experience, though the biggest priority is making sure transfers are integrated within the system. And if accomplished, we could definitely see them in the hunt for the title race. Now, Sisters of the Poor, Georgia State, the team has yet to determine their week 1 starting QB this season. The team really needs to be more fundamentally sound with their game management and player discipline, as their fast-paced offense was not effective, and obviously they're going to wish it was more effective, but it was nowhere close to what I think they would have liked last season, and that's one of the proponents that led them to a 3-9 season. Their aggressive schedule makes a bowl game possibility very difficult this season, with opponents such as Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, and Memphis on the schedule early in the season. Now, although they did beat Vanderbilt last year, I think it's still going to be difficult for them. I think Vanderbilt's going to have improved. And the fact that they don't have their quarterback set yet this season really makes it a struggle for them to look like a dominant team this season. And for the title game, we have James Madison University and Louisiana Lafayette Ragin' Cajuns. So for James Madison, Alonzo Barnett III was injured at the end of the 2024 season and is still a question for the upcoming season. But have no fear, Sluka is here. Transfer quarterback Matthew Sluka from UNLV is, in my opinion, a great option to start, and definitely should start, with the quarterback's recovery in question. Both Ayo Adai and George Petway are solid returning running backs to help this team, and major voids in defensive leadership experience need to be addressed, as their edge rushers left, as well as All-American Terrence Spence in the secondary. Now, linebacker Trent Hendrick will be looked at as a leader on the defense, and the team proved to be successful last season, as the departure of Kurt Cignetti is always going to be daunting, especially when you have a head coach that has been with your program for a while, and when he takes a lot of the talent he brought there with him to another school. But with the second year under head coach Bob Chesney, the offense could definitely be dangerous with all the additional players that he has. Now, we think they will be going against the Ragin' Cajuns. Quarterback Walker Howard is a blue chip SEC backup quarterback who never really started, and this really adds the question, could he be a stud or a dud? We never really saw much of his play in the SEC, but I think the fact that you have been surrounded by great competition and you have seen how these SEC teams kind of go about business really adds a sense of maturity and a sense of experience that you really can't get anywhere else. Now, both running back Zealand Perry and Bill Davis combined for over 1,500 yards and 14 touchdowns last season, which is very big for this offense. The offensive line is their only weak point, as they had to replace 2 all-conference players, and wide receivers could easily be questionable talent-wise, as they are an untested group. The defense is in shambles after multiple players transferred out and graduated, but has had a positive recruiting trail during the offseason to bolster the depth. So if the offensive line and defense can fit into place, they have a strong chance to compete for the conference title and James Madison. But at the end of the day, I believe James Madison University is our Sun Belt title winner. So that goes over all the conferences in the group of 5 and our thoughts on everything and where we think the season's going to shape out. So at the end, I mentioned at the beginning, we are starting to see this tier of the group of 5 schools kind of happen. And so I wanted to put our show's tier list of not the best chance to win that playoff spot for group of 5 as the automatic qualifier, but I want to have it as some of the best programs overall. So our first team is the Mountain West Conference. I think this is definitely going to change next year because they're losing so many of these teams to the Pac-12. But they have Boise State, UNLV. I think those are 2 of the strongest group of 5 schools that will have a chance to make a college football playoff run. Next is Conference USA. They are very poised to have great teams all around the board. And I definitely think that is a trend that we could see if one of these group of 5 conferences kind of break down. But I think the wild card UTEP as well as Jacksonville State has continued to be good second-tier teams in the conference, but Liberty continues to be one of those group of 5 powerhouse schools that are starting to emerge. Now, next is, for 3, the American Athletic Conference. The American Athletic Conference has a lot of what I consider hotbed markets. I mean, we look at Memphis, that's a big city. We look at Army and Navy, who don't have big cities, but they are synonymous with college football and they're part of the U.S. military. And Tulane is also one of those bigger markets found in New Orleans. But outside of that, I don't see much kind of going on for them. The Sun Belt Conference, I have it 4th, which is interesting just because I think they have a lot of solid teams, but they don't have any teams that really jump out at you except for James Madison. And so that's why I have them at 4. And at 5, we have the MAC. They consistently have always had these teams juggling for the best in the conference. And I think that there's just no consistency there with how competitive they are around the country. And so that's why I have them at 5. So with all that, yes, I know I didn't have an off my chest segment planned, but let me just get this off my chest. I think the group of 5 is a very fun aspect of college football to look at. It is definitely under threat with even surviving or some of these teams maybe dropping down to the FCS level, which is wild. But with the NIL and transfer portal, some of these schools are definitely struggling, and it's getting harder and harder each year to figure out who will win, which is why it makes it so interesting looking at these. And as we all know, it's not the high-powered, high-market, high-intense Power 4 program matchups. I still love to turn on late at night some of these group of 5 games, like Memphis always is going to have a fun game to watch. Tulane's always going to have a fun game to watch. So I definitely love the group of 5, and we love college football as a whole. But I want to get off my chest that the group of 5 is a lot of fun to watch. So if you're watching football this season, tune in and watch some of these games if there's nothing else that you think is interesting going on, especially weeks 1 through 4. We're going to see a lot of these group of 5 schools go up against Power 4 schools and see if any of them can beat them. I mean, look at Boise State last year. They played Oregon early in the season and lost by a field goal. But all in all, this concludes our deep dive and preview into the group of 5 conferences coming into the 2025 season. So next week, we're going to go and do our deep dive in the the Atlantic Coastal Conference, the ACC. And you can expect us to go through all the Power 4 conferences next, and we're going to be doing them alphabetical order, just like we did in today's show. And it is going to be a little different because this one, we had so many teams to look at, so many conferences to look at. We couldn't go in depth as much as we wanted to, or the show would have taken probably 2 hours. But next week, it will look a little different. We're still going to give some of these archetypes, but we're also going to give our prediction on how we think the league standings will finish out, the title game, as well as kind of tiering each of the teams and groups. But that is all for this week's show. Power 4 conferences are coming up. It's going to be exciting. College football is getting closer and closer. I can feel it. The weather's getting hotter. Soon it'll be getting a little cooler. And that's when college football starts. But thank you all for tuning in this episode, and we'll see you next time when we take more college football under review.